The dam seems to be breaking. We all knew that plenty of them exist behind closed doors. I'm talking about anti-Trump Republicans. But many are starting to now go public and say, I'm voting for Kamala Harris. Earlier this week, I interviewed Anthony Scaramucci, literally worked for Trump. And he said, I've publicly endorsed Kamala Harris. But there is much more to it. And there's an interesting Newsweek article, Republicans line up to endorse Kamala Harris. The list is extensive. Now, you may not know all of these people, but these are significant individuals in the political context. Former Republican Congress members endorsing Harris include Rod Chandler, Tom Coleman, Dave Emery, Wayne Gilchrist. Okay, it's a whole long list. Joe Walsh, you may know, he's been a guest on the program. We also have more prominent individuals like Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney, and others. What is the important aspect to this that we should talk about? There are many Republicans that we know privately have really disliked Trump all along, and they've confided in their personal contacts about that. There have been Republicans who, once they don't have anything left to run for, Mitt Romney is an example, although he did express his anti-Trump beliefs before he decided he wasn't running for re-election. But people like Mitt Romney or Flake and others who say, all right, I'm publicly saying I am not a Trump supporter, but I don't really have, there's really no political downside. You know, I'm independently wealthy like Romney, or I'm not running, or whatever the case may be. You then have people like Chris Christie who have said, I'm not voting for Trump. But recently, Chris Christie said, okay, I'm not voting for Trump, but I'm not voting for a Democrat either, at least as far as he's willing to admit publicly. The interesting thing about this growing list of Republican officials, current and former, that are straight up saying, I am voting for Kamala Harris, is that it not only might serve to influence some of the Republican voters into saying, hey, I have license to do it myself. And particularly in important swing states, it could make a difference. That's one reason that it's important to hear from these Republicans that they're endorsing Kamala Harris. But the other aspect to it is that it may trigger Trump into even more erratic behavior, which has this vicious circle or virtuous circle, if you're looking at it from our perspective, and we want to see that, of just sending him off the deep end further and further, reminding voters how unstable he is, reminding voters how chaos and insanity just follow him everywhere. So the important takeaway for us is that there are going to be some cynical and nakedly political actors on the left who are going to say to you the same thing they would say about Biden when a Republican would say, I prefer Joe to Trump, which is they're going to say, hey, you know why these Republicans are voting for Kamala Harris? It's not because Trump is bad. It's because Harris is actually conservative. And that's what they would say about Biden. Of course, Biden has some Republican supporters. Biden is really right wing. It's really important that we not fall into these traps. Remember that the Biden-Harris administration, as far as how they ran, I would argue the most progressive platform in 2020 of any Democratic nominee, right? Not candidate. Yes, there have been further left candidates that said, I'd like to be the nominee. But of actual Democratic nominees, Biden-Harris is the furthest left of anything we've seen. But it's also how they've governed. Because when you look at all of the legislation that was passed, when you look at where government spending has been done, I've done it a dozen times, but it's important not to take this slice of the left that's saying Republicans like Biden and they like Harris because they are actually right wing. It's important to be able to push back on that and to actually have the policy to demonstrate it. And we've done long form pieces on that before. So the list of Republicans that will vote for Harris, I believe, will only grow from now until November. The sort of actionable question is, will it influence voters? Will it make a difference? That's what I want to hear from you about. You can email me info@davidpakman.com and let me know. Will Republicans endorsing Harris move the needle, or will it not matter?